Hi everyone, what's up? AB Squad, this is your boy Abbas. Welcome to the family, welcome to Everywhere. Guys, I am super excited to check out this particular one done by Douglas. And if you know you're ready to join me to do this, do well to smash your like button, join your amazing family, join AB React by clicking on your subscribe button and then on your notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I upload a video. If you have recommendation, suggestion, guys, anything you would like me to do well to leave it right there in the comment section. Alright, AB Squad, there is no time to waste. Let's do this, guys.
Well, you've just said what you think. You've just given us your view, which is that it's nothing to do with Islam. And other people will have a view that it is. But I'm suggesting that as a society, we actually take the time to work out people's motives. But it's very clear that in your case, for instance, you wouldn't want it to be ascribed to an Islamic motive. Even if it was turned out that he had a copy of the Quran in the car, you would say it had nothing to do with Islam.
We would have accepted that.
There are people, let me finish.
You are about to see Douglas Murray tell the truth as it is. Douglas Murray debates a panel of Muslim scholars on the influence of religion, particularly Islam, in the West today. Douglas Murray speaks what is on most people's mind today in the West, but what most are afraid to say. Douglas Murray did not hold back.
Douglas, on the one hand, you're saying, look, we don't want to cower to the terrorists, we don't want to be singing their agenda, and yet the first thing everybody uses is the word Islam. Well, listen, in this particular state, I was actually in Scotland Yard on this case, so I was there on the day. To qualify as an Islamist incident, it has to fit a certain criteria. And it was discussed earlier on, but no one actually mentioned why this was classed and why it was taken over by SO15 as an Islamic incident. Otherwise, it would have just been homicide that would have taken over this case. There are certain criteria. For instance, if he said the word Allahu Akbar, that would have been clearly an Islamist incident. If he had had a flag of ISIS, clearly it would have been. So he didn't have any of those. He didn't say anything. He didn't even know. The only thing that makes this a counter-terrorism...
he was a Muslim?
No, not even that. It was because he wasn't we don't know if he was a practicing Muslim, because he clearly wasn't a very good Muslim, was the
What does that mean? What does a very good Muslim mean?
Well, if he was taking cocaine, he was into, wife bashing, all those things. If he was a Muslim, he wouldn't be taking cocaine and having, drinking alcohol. But it was because he attacked, let me just finish the point. The reason was because he attacked a political institution, the heart of government. That was one of the reasons, if you like, that qualified it. In terms of practicing, that's still coming out. We don't know whether...
Well, you've just said what you think. You've just given us your view, which is that it's nothing to do with Islam. And other people will have a view that it is. But I'm suggesting that as a society, we actually take the time to work out people's motives. But it's very clear that in your case, for instance, you wouldn't want it to be ascribed to an Islamic motive. Even if it was turned out that he had a copy of the Quran in the car, you would say it had nothing to do with Islam.
We would have accepted that.
There are people, let me finish the point. And there are people who would say it has something to do with Islam, even if it's very clear that it has nothing to do with Islam. But there are, in this whole thing, my simple point is that we should be looking at the motives. And at the moment, there are parts of the anti-terrorism, counter-extremism strategy where the government is, and politicians are very worried about treading on it. And you saw it, as was mentioned earlier, in Theresa May's comments in the House this week, where she immediately ruled one aspect of this whole thing.
Douglas Murray's stance on probing the religious motivations behind terrorist attacks, particularly those related to Islam, is a critical and often overlooked perspective in the contemporary discourse on terrorism and security. Murray rightly criticizes the reluctance of media outlets and political figures to thoroughly examine the role that Islamic ideology may play in such atrocities. This avoidance, he argues, is primarily due to a fear of offending Muslim communities, which can hinder a full understanding and effective response to the threat. Firstly, it's important to note that the reluctance to discuss the religious motivations behind some terrorist attacks can lead to an incomplete narrative. For instance, research by the University of Maryland's Global Terrorism Database reveals that a significant proportion of global terrorist attacks have been perpetrated by groups or individuals with radical Islamist motives. This statistic is not to generalize or stigmatize all followers of Islam, but to acknowledge that, like any ideology, parts of its interpretation can lead to radicalization. Moreover, scholars like Sam Harris and Mayajid Nawaz have highlighted the necessity of distinguishing between the peaceful majority of Muslims and the radical fringes. In their book, Islam and the Future of Tolerance, they argue for a candid discussion about the aspects of Islamic doctrine that jihadists use to justify their actions. This discussion, they posit, is essential not only for countering terrorism, but also for empowering reformist elements within Muslim communities. A Pew Research Center study on religious beliefs and violence found varying perspectives among Muslim communities globally, with significant minorities in several countries justifying suicide bombings and other forms of violence against civilians.
I think Islam is, this terrorism, this fighting, this attack, sometimes it tends to make people not to really know how to go about this, it tends to make people don't know, how to, offend, I think trying to, wrong the Islamic country, you tend to receive threats and so on. So it's always a thing that makes people to be scared.
In defense of Islam. Ignoring these viewpoints does not eliminate them. Rather, it potentially allows for their growth unchecked by critical discussion and debate. It is essential to advocate for open, honest dialogue about all aspects of terrorism, including religious motivations. This approach not only aids in the accurate assessment and strategy formation against threats, but also protects the wider Muslim community from unjust collective blame.
So when you speak about journalism and accuracy, of course, and we all want the truth. It's not just you,
I disagree
it's me.
that we all want the truth.
Okay, so let me tell you for myself, and I can speak on behalf of perhaps 99% of the British Muslim public, that generally none of us know the motives behind people who carry out these acts. I myself am very much part of this society. I'm born and raised a Londoner. I'm an observant Muslim, and you don't see somebody like me carrying out these acts inspired by my faith. Therefore,
that doesn't mean that the people who do it
I'm not
haven't
saying,
been inspired.
I'm not, and people are analysing scripture. It's not whether it's the Quran or the biblical scripture. You seem to be quite hung up on the fact that this is a Quranic scriptural point.
Scriptures are open to interpretation, and literally.
If they're not quoting scripture, why are we bringing scripture into this? If they're not quoting scripture,
because a lot of them quote.
Because
a lot of them quote the verses that say, "Find the infidels,
no,
root
they
them
don't.
out, and kill them."
I debate these.
Douglas wanted to come in. Douglas,
come on. This is a great example of it right here. Mr. Andalusi thinks that none of the terrorists ever quote the Quran. Flat out wrong. Flat out wrong. Let me give you one example. You mentioned it earlier, the killers of Lee Rigby. Michael Adelajo, on his body, when the police arrested him, he had a note in his pocket to his young daughter explaining why he did what he did. It's all on the public record. You can see the facts.
Are we right to give these terrorists a publicity? Most time they actually, quote scriptures, quote the Islamic, name it, but they tend to still do what they are supposed to do. Of course, guys, this thing is something that, it's not just one person, it's not just one people, a community. It's something every single people, everyone needs to work on, needs to see how they can put an end to this.
Similarly, on the BBC's website, and he has footnotes throughout it of Quranic verses that he explains justify, in his view, his actions. Now, that's the beginning. Hang on, let me just finish my point before the proselytization begins, okay? Let me just finish my point. That would seem to me to be, therefore, a very clear occasion, never mind the thousands of others we could list worldwide, a very clear occasion on this country when one of our soldiers was murdered on our streets, where clearly scripture had something to do with it. So the problem that a lot of us have is we are willing to discuss the drugs bit, we're willing to discuss the foreign policy bit, we're willing to discuss all this. Why are you not willing to concede that there is a religious element? Sometimes.
No, wait.
We understand the main point.
Mohammed first. Now, listen, here's my plan. Wait a minute, everyone's
Douglas Murray's assertion that there is a religious component in many terrorist attacks, which stems from certain interpretations of the Quran, is an uncomfortable yet crucial point that demands honest examination. While the vast majority of Muslims worldwide live peacefully and do not subscribe to radical views, extremists often use specific Quranic texts to justify their violent actions. Understanding these interpretations is not about blaming a religion as a whole, but about recognizing the complexities within it that can be exploited by radicals. One commonly cited verse is Surah At-Tawbah, often referred to as the verse of the sword. Extremist groups interpret this verse as a command to kill non-believers until they convert to Islam or pay a tax in submission, unless they are part of a treaty. It's important to note, however, that many scholars and mainstream Muslims argue that this verse is historically contextual, intended only for a specific time and not as a general command. Another verse, Surah Al-Baqarah, instructs Muslims to kill them wherever you overtake them, in reference to fighting against persecution. Radicals may interpret this as a broad license for violence, whereas traditional teachings emphasize its context of self-defense during persecution. These verses, among others, are prime examples of how religious texts can be interpreted in vastly different ways. Groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda take these verses out of their historical and scholarly contexts to bolster their ideological narratives and recruit followers under the guise of religious.
Alright, if you really enjoyed that video, if you have any comments, do well to drop it in the comment section. Share your own thoughts, share your own comment. Let's discuss, let's say something about it. And of course, guys, I can't wait to see you in my next video. And of course, like I will always say, don't hesitate to drop your recommendation, your suggestions on this channel. Drop it in the comment section. I'll always do well to look after it. I'll always do well to look and do a reaction to it for you guys. Alright, if you really enjoyed this video as much as I did, don't always forget to like this video, join your family, join ABReact by clicking on your subscribe button, and then of course on your notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I upload a video. If you have recommendation, like I will always say, always do well to leave right there in the comment section. Alright, every screen, I can't wait to have you back on this channel. Until then, stay positive and don't touch that dial. Bye guys, and do have a great weekend. Bye.